that crisis moment is what led to a complete reconsideration of recognizing that I had lost sight of who I am.
Yeah.
And that I needed to go back to the basics. You can't just quit everything and go sit on a mountain. But, so I wound things to where I just became very deeply introspective and opened up that conversation.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I like to welcome our guests because I know that in my mind and my heart, they're coming with a couple of things that are very expensive that I've learned. Time, 24 hours has been offered to every man and woman at this planet right here. And Kevin is here to spend some of it. Once spent, spent. And so I want to thank him and honor him for coming and spending some of that quality stuff with us. The other is the journey, what we call the journey. The journey helped created him. It deposited some things into him, and we want to honor him that he's here to become vulnerable and share that with us so that you and I can become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. Kevin, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Ken, thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you and to share our conversation with the whole Threads of Enlightenment community. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned to you, I always pose this question, and my audience are familiar with that question. And it is geared to that second part of our journey, if you will. And I always tell people there's stop being selfish and get busy with your journey, because we have the independent part of the journey, and then we have the interdependent part where we are together, gaining, holding hands and walking as we are engaging with each other. How do you serve mankind?
What a wonderful question. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, it's not a very easy answer. I certainly can answer it in brief, but it's the journey that led me to that service. That probably is where the secret sauce is. So how do I serve mankind? I've come to a place in my journey where I found myself, and this is about 15 years ago, over 15 years ago, where I found myself most of my life at that moment. I was chasing my tail because I had been told a series of virtues and values and narratives, which convinced me that to dedicate my life to the pursuit of the American dream and, all that entails. And so I did. I'm a second generation American. My mother was born originally in Panama. She raised me to in my Christian faith, but she also raised me to appreciate the blessing that it was to be born in America, and to honor that in everything I did, and by becoming as best a citizen and best a person as I could. And so that certainly sounds wonderful. What could be wrong with that?
Yeah.
But then I went about setting about my career. I served active duty in the military. I went to college and graduate school. I became a business banker. Helped many, many, many young entrepreneurs grow and develop their businesses, and by customizing financial products for them, all the things, and with that came a certain amount of success, right? That builds into this notion of the American dream: the capacity to own a home, the capacity to have savings, the capacity to save for college for your kids, all the secular things that you would do to secure yourself, right? As I was on that journey, and now I reference it as a hamster wheel, doing those things, feeling like this is what I was supposed to be doing, when I actually achieved it. Sort of like, if you're chasing your tail, what happens when you catch it? Then you realize you're chasing your tail.
Yeah.
Okay. What I realized in that moment, beautiful family, big house, all this stuff, money in the bank, I felt completely hollow. It was a crisis moment for me. Because I realized I spent much of my adult life up to that point prioritizing certain values and virtues, accumulating stuff, right? And it meant nothing. I mean, certainly I want to have a comfortable life. I want to be able to take care of my family, but at the end of the day, it was about me. It was about how could I, have the big house? How could I make sure that I could provide for mine, And so that sent me on a 10-year introspective review, because clearly I didn't know myself.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I valued. I had somehow forgotten, the roots of my foundation. And after that 10-year journey, and again, I'm a prayerful man, And so
Yeah.
I have this ongoing conversation with our Lord, asking for guidance, talking about various things, choices in the road, that type of thing. And after that 10-year journey in my prayerful life, the Lord inspired me to say, you know what? Now you have realized, you have realized who you are. It's time for you to share that wisdom and to start writing, to share that. And so then I started writing these commentaries, these social commentaries. The long and short of it is how I have come to learn to serve humanity, to serve creation, is I want to be a breadcrumb to the listener, to anyone who would hear my voice, that helps them remember who they are. Because we live in a context where we have been told a bunch of virtues, values, and narratives, which give us a totally distorted picture of who we actually are, which convinces us that we're separate beings, that what happens to Ken doesn't affect Kevin. So therefore, as long as I'm taking care of mine and whatever abuse is happening to Ken, I can roll over and go to sleep and say, well, Ken probably did something wrong, because this is what passes for normal. So that vision of who we are and what our relationship is to each other has led the world to the place we're in right now. And so I find my service to humanity is to be a breadcrumb to remind us that we're all part of one family of creation, and that we all live and survive every day based on the contributions of people we'll never know and the natural environment that we do not control. And that in order for us to do anything, we have to receive so much of our Lord's abundance that empowers us to take the first breath, the next breath, that then allows us to do whatever we're going to do. And so understanding, and this is the remembering of who we are, understanding what we must receive in order for us to do anything gives us the inspiration to say, I must use that breath to give as abundantly as I had to receive in order to do. That's how I serve. I want to be that breadcrumb, because this is a truth that we already know. So this is not about new skills. This is about remembering in a context where we've been convinced to forget.
That is pretty detailed laid out, and I hope you guys get there's a lot of stuff in there. The adage, as they say, to do this, the American dream, chase the American dream, and every man and every woman that is on this planet, this house that we live in called the body, it lives off of material stuff, and we like all the achievement of material stuff. But the language of the soul, the currency of the soul is none of that. And the body is a third of us. So you spend your entire life trying to pursue things to cater to 1/3 of you. You're in trouble, man. And so most of us are in trouble. That's why you have a millionaire can commit suicide, because he or she has everything that you've been chasing, and every society has told you that chase that you should get, and you should arrive at nirvana. And yet they are out of control, and we're watching them daily committing suicide and living a life because their mind has not been able to figure out who they are. And so one of the things that we do here, Kevin, is go back into the beginning of our beginnings, I call it. And that's when we hit this planet, we visit certain spaces, I call it, and we move through life, if you will, from one to another. The first place that we locate is that family unit. And in that family unit, we are there for several years. And as we begin to navigate out on quote unquote independence, heading into our adult life kind of madness that we talk about. And so we start here in this family. In the family, we are going to learn about communication skills. We're going to learn our modus operandi. We're going to learn about belief. We're going to learn about faith. We're going to learn about all kinds of stuff right there. What was your family unit like?
Well, we all go through some stuff. So my family unit, my parents got divorced when I was 5 years old and my brother Ruben was 7 years old. But it wasn't a normal divorce, as in, two parents that it didn't work out, and therefore they just get divorced and then they go on to raise their children. My father chose for his reasons that he didn't want to participate in raising us. So he went into court and literally said he didn't have any children. My mother, a deeply faithful woman, steeped in her Christian faith, was like, that's fine. You have to do what you do. So she went on to raise us by herself, without any support from him. And her thought process is that she could better secure a healthy environment for us to grow if the person who was raising them wanted to raise them, as opposed to forcing someone to
Yeah.
participate when they didn't want to. And I could tell you in conclusion that my mother is our Lord's truest sign of love in my life.
Yeah.
To this day, that woman is. And so she raised my brother and I, invested everything that she had in raising us to be strong young men, servant leaders,
Yeah.
is, which is the model,
Mhm.
within the context of the Christian faith. And we weren't wealthy, but we didn't want for things. We had everything we needed. She invested in our education, and she gave each of us the opportunity to grow and be who we could be. The tragedy of, and this is the stuff we go through, is that something in my brother broke when my father went away and never came back.
Yeah.
He knew my father better. He was older.
Yeah.
He had a closer relationship. And how that defined me, I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that my father had represented something I just didn't want to be. And
Yeah.
that was the person who wasn't there when their family needed them. And so while my mother was doing her best to raise us not to hate our father, but to move forward in our lives, and that we all make these choices. And, so I did move forward within the context of, yet I'm never going to be the kind of person who won't be there for my family when they need me. Right. My brother did a different path, as we fast forward to today, I'll be 60 in November. My brother will be 62 in September. He's never recovered. He's never married. He never had children. Unfortunately, he did not have the same commitment in his faith. And as a result, I felt like he didn't have a wellspring by which to draw strength and heal and overcome this, this deep loss that he experienced as a child, and so he's to this day is not in a good place and probably won't be here much longer.
Yeah.
Just because it is just steeped. And, so, but my upbringing was one of love and a small family raised in the Christian faith,
Yeah.
In the Bronx, New York. And it gave me the lessons that serve me to this day.
Let me ask you a question as to, because divorce is a traumatic situation, and we see how you handled trauma and how your brother handled trauma, and everyone, we're all individuals and we have our journeys and so forth.
Yeah.
As a young man, a young boy going through all of that, how did it impact your relationship with others outside of the family? How did you relate to friends? What was Kevin's way of dealing with others going through that, but still was able to manage himself? How were you doing?
Well, I was empowered to be loving, to be open, to still be receptive to new friendships because my mother secured me. My mother gave us the environment where we were going to be okay. So as a child, you turn to your parents for that protection, and then it allows you the freedom to bloom, the freedom to grow, fear.
Yeah.
So there was no fear. I was allowed to be a child because and so I was able to form wonderful friendships over the course of my youth. My home life was nourishing and safe. So therefore, there wasn't the jealousies of that infected friendships that would be associated, let's say, with friends who had fathers and mothers who were there and therefore didn't have the concerns that my mother had and that she worked so hard to protect us from. That wasn't a part of it. So my ability to socialize, my ability to immerse in my faith, my ability to be expansive, right, was nurtured by a very loving, deeply faithful, deeply spiritual woman. And I still have those friendships to this day. I still have those relationships to this day.
That's incredible.
It was an incredible experience and continues to be. She lives, within an hour of me right now. So she's doing great. She's 82 and She completely healthy, and I just am blessed every day to have her, and I know eventually, like we all do, she will go back home, and that's a beautiful thing, but I've celebrated her for as long as I've had her, and will continue to do so for as long as
That
I
is
can.
awesome. Great story, man. I love it. When you're heading, as I'm saying, you're progressing, moving through life, and you're looking at college, looking at other options out there in the world, which option did you pick and why did you pick it?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ken, for that question. So as I finished, it was so interesting. As I mentioned that the response to my father not being there, it wasn't that I just moved on and never thought about that. It just wasn't a point of toxicity or a point, it
Yeah.
wasn't a wound. I just was inspired to be the kind of man who would provide, who would be a servant, who would lead by example, whose strength would not be a function of making anyone else weak. And so as I came through high school, it was so interesting. I was so ready to start my adult journey.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with my high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
And so, we went to the prom, high school, and I signed up. My mother was prepared. She had done some savings, prepared to send me off to college. She was sending my brother to college. And I said, no, I just want to do it. I want to do this. I don't want you to have to work extra hard to pay for my education. And so I signed up for the U.S. Army. I made the choice that say, you know what, I can sign up for the Army. They have a great GI Bill, serve my country, the country that's given me every opportunity I've had, and then take the GI Bill and go to school or whatever. And so in making that choice, I decided to propose and marry my high school sweetheart. And so we got 18. People thought, okay, is someone pregnant? What's going on here? No, it was none of that. There was nothing illicit. I loved her and she loved me, and we were giving up opportunities to be together and be married, and so I joined the military and did very well in terms of my entrance exams and my placement into the military, and I served my 4 years active duty in NATO in Germany from 1983 to 1987. So this was during the Reagan administration, if you can believe that. And that set me down the path of, okay, so serving a cause bigger than myself, of course, is the thing about military service is you are agreeing to defer your sense of sovereignty, your sense of choice to civilian leaders to decide under what circumstances is it necessary to deploy military force in order to protect the national security interests of the country. This person steeped in their faith, then some, under what circumstances would you kill or be killed, right? I steeped deeply on this and prayed deeply on this. And the notion of it does become a rationalization. The notion of to protect a way of life, to protect people who can't protect themselves, those type of things. So I grappled with that and came to that resolution. And to this day, I'm thankful that I never had to, the balloon didn't go up. I did not get sent into combat during that period of time. You don't get to control those things. And that's just how it turned out. But I had to go through that journey too, because that changes you to be willing to do whatever to kill or be killed, under what context. Typically, you don't have to make that choice until you find yourself in the situation. But that's what military service opened up to me is that I needed to consider that in advance. But then after I finished my military service, which was wonderful in Germany and exposed to different cultures, and I was a kid, grew up in the Bronx, New York. And here I was living on the German countryside and Rhine River country, wine country, and walking 3 miles to get to the store to shop every day for fresh food. It was all farming. It was beautiful. And so after my military service, I had money for school, and me and my wife, we went to college in Texas. And, after 8 years of marriage, we decided, okay, now it's time to start our family. So that was the benefit of getting married so young. We could, take the time, figure this thing out as best we could, and enjoy some life and experience some life, and then make the conscious decision, okay, it's time to start a family. And so then we, just as I was graduating with my undergraduate degree in economics, we had our oldest son, Patrick, in April of 1992. And so leave this part of the conversation here. That inspiration to have a child inspired me. There was a song in popular music by a group called Mike and the Mechanics called In the Living Years. In the Living Years, the point of the song is to tell people who you love and who love you, to let them know that you love them. Don't let whatever the dispute is survive their life, and then you never get to say that you actually love them. You never reconciled, right? You know, and so I was inspired to contact my dad, who I hadn't seen since I was 5 years old, right? And my mother still had a relationship with his sister, because my inspiration is I wanted my father to know that I was having a son, and I wanted my son to be able to understand, just like I wanted to understand who was my father, who was his grandfather, that type of thing. And so I reached out and I contacted my dad, and my mom helped me and got the number, and we had an amazing conversation. I mean, I'll be candid. I asked him up front, how could he go away and never come back? How does he do that? And he had an interesting response, which was surprising. But before I even get to what he said, I didn't ask the question because I thought, okay, he was going to tell me something that I was like, okay, I could see how I would have done that, But I just, in order to move forward, I had forgiven him long before that. My mom had helped me to go through that process of forgiving long before that. But I just wanted to hear so that we could just move forward. And so he explained that when he left, he had converted to being a Jehovah's Witness. And he felt that it would have conflicted with how my mother was raising us in the Christian faith. That was his rationale. So, let's leave that in the air for, okay. And so then, but what I experienced when he said that, and we had that to us, is this deep release of whatever the remaining trauma, loss, regret, that was still in my body. All of a sudden lifted, my heart opened up. And then I said, okay, we can't do anything about what happened, but now we can enjoy each other in this now moment and moving forward without judgment. And then we talked all night. And it was the most wonderful, loving, joyful conversation. I learned things about my dad that I would have never known. And so then we called the next night, and we did the same thing, spoke all night. So I thought this was going to be the start of a new relationship, and inviting him into the family. He knew that I loved him. I knew he loved me. That he was not going to be judged by me. And then he never took my calls again. He went on to die in 2004. There was those two conversations I had, but I was able to share with my son Patrick stories about his grandfather, and that I only knew because we took that opportunity. But that was his journey. He couldn't forgive himself. That was what it came down to. He couldn't forgive himself. So yes, that's how my journey began. It started in military service. It started by getting married to the woman who would be the mother of my children, and who I would be married for 18 years to. And it's been quite the run.
Powerful story of reconciliation. God is interested in it. There's these two brothers, Esau and Jacob.
Yes.
Esau hated his brother. In fact, when you read other sources, it goes into the book of Jubilees and stuff like that, goes into much more detail as to what happened between those two brothers. And Esau tried to kill our boy a couple of times, and he sent his son to go kill him and all kinds of stuff. And so, but many years later, God brought them back to reconcile. And again, God is interested in character. He's not interested in all of our feelings and all this kind of crazy stuff. He's interested in our character. And so he saw that you needed some relief that was inside, that you needed some stuff done, that you weren't aware of that much, but it was there. And when you got your conversation, you were able to get that release, because once you're released from that, as they say, smooth sailing from that point on, as far as nothing is holding you back where you're looking in that direction, you're now able to focus. And you became acquainted with some of the most powerful stuff that'll happen amongst a human being, and that's forgiveness. And there's nothing like it when we are capable of forgiving and moving through that. And so God afforded you with that. So here you are, you went to school, you study, you're a big boss now, you got your degree, and you got into your economic, and you're a businessman, and you're there. And within the movement of your life is this underlying pressure, or not pressure, this compass of chasing the American dream. And we all hear the American dream. Everyone has been hearing it forever. But with that American dream, a lot of nightmares within that thing that they
That's
don't
right.
talk about. So talk to us about your journey towards this quote unquote the American dream. And as you began to accumulate all this stuff, the big house, the big things or whatever, but as you're moving through all of that accumulation, you still there, Kevin. You're still an individual. You stated that you're a praying man. And I know if you have a relationship with God being a praying man, um, you're getting some turmoil within that because you're trying to
That's right.
move through all the good stuff, but then there's just this unrest just sitting on your chest that you can't seem to shake it at all, but it'll follow you until you come to a place where you're going to go, okay, I need to talk. We need to talk. Talk to
Yeah.
us about that journey there, Kevin, because it is a journey. It's a lot of stuff happening there, the ups and downs of life, the ups and downs in the internal man, and all the different things. And what did you use in that time period to move you through so that you didn't lose your mind, if you will?
Well, there's such steep wisdom in the adage, you can't serve two masters.
The life
you
of
know,
compromise, man.
right. This is the whole thing, So here, steeped in my faith as a young man,
Yeah.
you get into the mechanisms of life, the job, the
Hmm.
responsibilities, all those things. All of a sudden, progressively, my conversation for spiritual guidance faded to the background. It was ongoing. It was
Hmm.
periodic, but it wasn't as topical. It wasn't as top of mind. And as a result, what was driving my choices were the secular norms. What is freedom in an American sense mean? What does independence
Yeah.
in an American sense mean? What does self-interest in an American sense mean? What does competition in an American sense mean? What those things mean really is that, playing by the rules that everyone can see, these are all rationalizations for how it's okay for me to think of myself and how well I can do. And as opposed to thinking of being a service to others.
Yeah.
And so by focusing in on the competition, by focusing in on advancing my own self-interest, by focusing in on using my freedom to do those things, right? I found myself far afield from the heart of my faith journey, from the heart of my spiritual journey, from the heart of what is true about
Yeah.
everything that I experience. And I was, and this is how I wound up on the hamster wheel. In other words, setting those things aside and not having that ongoing conversation, or not bringing into the ongoing conversation with our Lord the realities of what I was doing every day, right? Allowed those realities to just, the wisdom that was available to me to not affect the choices I was making. And so what did I find myself? I found myself working very hard. I found myself not taking as good care of my spiritual health, which affected my emotional health, which ultimately affected my physical health. Right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of people. I had too many friends that you bring stress to your fitness exercise. So it's not like you're not trying. Like I would run,
Yeah.
7 miles a day, 3 days a week, and stuff like that. And then you hear about someone keeling over, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't get the benefit of their exercise because it's not about balance and wellness. It's about I got this much time to squeeze this much exercise in before I go back to work, and I can because you're on the hamster wheel, right?
Yeah.
And so I was on the hamster wheel, and it literally took feeling like being in my early feast and having all the accumulation of things
Yeah.
based on all that focused energy and self-interest. I almost had a stroke. I mean, my health was starting to be affected by the fact that I wasn't feeding my soul anymore.
Yeah.
I was just accumulating stuff,
Hmm.
most of which I
Yeah.
didn't use,
Yeah.
and so it was until I came to a crisis moment that I said, what am I doing? What is,
Yeah.
there's no more joy in this. And there's certainly no sense of purpose. And the only people it's benefiting is me. And yes, I guess my family is getting a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
but is it really benefiting them? How am
Yeah.
I modeling the way to be?
Yeah.
And so that really required that crisis moment is what led to a complete reconsideration of recognizing that I had lost sight of who I am.
Yeah.
And that I needed to go back to the basics. You can't just quit everything and go sit on a mountain. So I wound things to where I just became very deeply introspective and opened up that conversation once again with our Lord.
Talk to us about that, Kevin. Because trauma, I tell people, trauma comes to afford you the opportunity, if you will, to slow down.
Yes.
And become introspective and become the observer of your life. What am I doing here? What's going on? When we become the observer in the life, it's the beginning of it all. That's right there. It's where it starts.
That's right.
And now talk to me about that spot right there. You mentioned the crisis that came. And when you looked into the face of that crisis and that crisis is looking at you, what did it reveal to you at that moment right there?
It revealed that the basis by which I was making choices was not true.
Yeah.
That motivations, the aspirations did not reflect who I am. That they were detached. They were an externally provided source of inspiration that did not serve either me or anyone or humanity in general, right? Yeah. And that it was essential if I wanted to find purpose that I find my truth. So I went to the foundation and I went back to the conversation and you just open your heart and you start the process of remembering. I started the process of starting to remember who I actually am. That I was created, that I didn't create myself, that literally I don't even feed myself. I don't make the food I eat. I don't make the clothes I wear. I don't make the air I breathe. I don't make the water I drink. I don't make the house I own. Right? I did right. I didn't make the bed I sleep in. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's not like I didn't do anything, but the idea is who I am is actually a function of this beautiful, symbiotic, interdependent web of creation that allows me to be who I am. The myth of the American dream and the myth of the virtues and values and narratives that support it convince us that it begins with us. When the reality is that we are entirely a function of the abundance of the gift of creation, entirely. And that when you're given a gift that abundantly, that empowers you to do what you're able to do, the most natural realization is to give as vigorously and as abundantly as you receive, right? And that I had to hit that rock bottom. I had to feel the hollowness that comes from gluttony, that comes from materialism, to finally realize, okay, we're hollow now. What that felt like. I just felt like I was accumulating all this stuff and it was only making me feel more and more worthless, more and more hollow, more and more meaningless, right? Yeah. And which is the idea of what gluttony does to you. And so that set off a new journey.
Yeah, there's stuff that happens.
Yes.
When you said rock bottom, Kevin, and I thought of the prodigal son. Rock bottom is not a bad place sometimes. We got to go rock bottom because at bottom we have expended all of ourself. We're done. We've been chasing the wind. And so we hit the rock bottom. There is nothing left. I got nothing. But what God uses and does there when we hit rock bottom is one of the most beautiful things, Kevin. He gives us revelation. The prodigal son was sitting there with the pigs. I tell people sometimes you just got to go sit with the pigs. And while he was sitting with the pigs, God gave him a revelation. And that revelation was the one that changed his life. And so here you are, rock bottom. You saw what the American dream is all about in the sense that you chased it and you saw the emptiness of it. And you're there at rock bottom. Your revelation, when you received it, because the prodigal son, he got up after he received it. What did it do to you, Kevin, when you got it? And how did you get up, if you will, once you got it and you saw what it was and you saw the emptiness of it all? What did Kevin do from that point on to begin to his journey to where he is today?
Thank you for the question, Ken. It was the epiphany of the experience. It was as if I was now empowered like the sun itself
Mm-hmm.
to go from empty
Mm-hmm.
to realizing that, in fact, I was part of something broader than just the physical body that had been
Mm-hmm.
used to accumulate all this stuff, but that I was empowered by all this blessing and abundance that is here for each of us, that I was ignoring, that I was taking for granted,
Yeah.
that I was just, you take it as, I guess it's some sort of given, right?
Yeah.
Realizing what that was there for me
Mm-hmm.
in order to do something, in order to love each other as we have been loved,
Yeah.
in order to give, in
Yeah.
order to serve.
Yeah.
Right. Shift was seeing the robustness of who I am, which
Yeah.
is not limited to this physical body, right? It is, again, we are all interconnected, symbiotically so empowered beings of creation, fully capable of contributing to the mosaic, contributing to the abundance for the good of all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because this is how we are, how the abundance is received by each of us. All this abundance is good for all of us and
Yeah.
here for all of us, right? And therefore, if you're empowered by that abundance, sunlight, air, water, nutrients, all the literal things that allow us to completely function are
Mm-hmm.
given to us, right? If they're given to us, right? Now, and they're a part of who we are. Now this is where we derive our sense of purpose, because the most natural response is for your heart to open, for the gratefulness for all that you received before you're able to do anything, right? Empowers you to now say, okay, I'm going to take this energy that I have and I'm going to give back. I'm going to create. I'm going to serve. I'm going to use my unique skills. God gave me unique skills. I'm going to use those unique skills to produce services, to produce a context that can benefit all of us, right? And you start that process. And you don't know what that's necessarily going to be. But by shifting the focus away from me advancing my own self-interest, me thinking about my independence, notwithstanding what happens to Ken, no, that was the old paradigm. That was the false narratives that I was living by. Now I had this, but intrinsically, what is true about my experience? I knew that we are interconnected, that we are part of this broader mosaic of creation. And now I was empowered by that recognition, by that memory that is affirmed with every breath I take, to now commit myself to give back. And so I started down that path. One of the ways that manifested was to write what I had learned when I went inside, to write what I had learned when I found the American dream to be hollow. And so I produced a book of commentaries called Onward at Last that was published by Atmosphere Press in December of 2022. And it's a bunch of series of social commentaries. But when I wrote it, I understood that we lived in a period of such great toxicity that basic trust between people is broken down. That there are forces at work who, for their own self-interest, have encouraged us to hate each other, have encouraged us to have weaponized the very things that make us unique. All of them. Whether it's your ethnicity, your age, your race, your nationality, your faith, your lack of faith, your sexual persuasion, whatever, all of it has been weaponized. What school you went to, in order to get us fighting against each other. That was the audience. That was the water in which we swim. That here I'm trying to communicate this revelation of oneness, revelation that we are all interconnected parts of one beautiful creation, universal creation, right? How can I get that across to people in a context where they're gonna look at me as a Black man in America, and they're gonna put me in a certain box, and I can only talk to certain people, and that they think they know something about me, that whole thing. And so what I did was, and it's through inspiration. Our Lord is, you want the answer, go to the Lord, I write using our shared experiences. The journey path I went on, many people are on that journey path themselves. So if you use our shared experiences to make the case that we are actually not independent, That doesn't mean we're not sovereign. That doesn't mean we don't have choices, but that we don't live independently. If you use our shared experiences as a breadcrumb to help people to remember who they actually are, they don't have to trust you. They don't have to trust your credentials. They don't have to trust your argument. All they have to do is look to their own experience and say, does that resonate? Right? And that became the vehicle by which my book Onward at Last makes the case that we need to shed these false virtues, these false values, these false narratives that have convinced us of this story that is not who we are, and that has led us to this toxicity that is essentially destroying the creation that we all benefit from. And so the book was published in 2022. I went on a book tour then, and that was great. And then the 2024 presidential election occurred.
Yeah.
And the things that I was talking about in my book in terms of false narratives were just exploded on the scene in a national presidential election.
Yeah.
And so I was inspired to write a 2024 presidential election edition version, a new edition of the book with a new chapter called America at the Crossroads. And because once again, it's only gotten worse. It's only gotten more obvious. It's only gotten more extreme, and so hopefully that could be the vehicle to reach more people. And so that's how my service journey began. Once I had that epiphany, that revelation, that I am not just this body, that we are not separate in beings. That's not how we function. That's not how we live. That's not how we survive, right? Once I got out of that mindset, and into who I actually am based on remembering, because it's not like I didn't know that. The revelation helped me to remember that, right? This is how it manifests, to be the breadcrumb, to tell the story, to share the journey that each of us are on, that we share in our modern Western American experience, so that it could penetrate past the pain and the suffering of the false narratives, which cause us to have harsh feelings for each other, which cause us not to hear each other, which cause us not to see each other, right? How do you get past that? Is allowing a person to tap into the resonance of their own lived experience as evidence that, I've forgotten who I am. And now you're helping me remember. And then you start that process. That's how my service journey manifested, and how it's ongoing to this day.
Guys, we're going to put together these links and make sure everything is working and stuff, so you can get that book, because it's much more needed now today in our society and the world, because the world has made some decisions that Kevin has talked about. And those decision that it's made is to divide us. And what he's saying is that, no, let's hold on. We're much more similar and alike as a symbiotic group, if you will, that we can overcome this. But again, those insights are residing within that book. And I've said this to you guys, it's coming to a time where we are going to need wisdom to how to handle all this situation. And within those pages, the walls of what you call the covers, house wisdom and knowledge and insight there. And so again, we're going to provide everything for you guys to get access to. Kevin, I have this last question to throw at you.
Surely.
You have a mic. In the context of what you have, your revelation in the book and all of the things that are happening currently on the planet. But, I know some of the answers, but I want to, again, repetition is not a bad thing, especially when you're learning a new principle. You have a mic. It's connected to every single person on this planet. It's there. It's wired into all of us. What would you say?
What I would say is that more than ever, it is critical to steep your life on what is actually true, in alignment with the steep wisdom of your lived experiences. That it's imperative that before you believe anything in terms of the broader narrative, in terms of the broader normal values, what society's demanding of you, those virtues, how you measure what success is and what good is and all those things, before you accept any of that, because we've taken that for granted as a given. Yeah. You need to make sure that it's true, that it aligns with the steep wisdom of your actual lived experience. We are empowered to know what is true. We could feel like when the hair goes up on the back of our necks. We have a sense of truth based on what we've lived in our lives, right? Make sure that you're building your life and making your choices steeped in that, and not the narratives that we're told, not the values that we're handed to, that we're expected to accept, not the virtues that tell us how to see ourselves and each other. Make sure that those things are true before you accept them. And if you do that, you will remember the full richness of who you are, and that is my gift, is that this was revealed to me, and I hope you can receive this in your lives.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much, man, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment and engaging with us and allowing us to see the vision that you have, and to allow us to be a part of your vulnerability, to drink from you and gain wisdom and insight. Again, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Ken, it has been a pleasure. And I just want to say in a quick moment that the manner by which you open up and invite and create this safe space, it really touched me in this conversation. So I thank you for being a wonderful host, and I thank the entire Threads of Enlightenment community, and I look forward to future conversations as they occur.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.